Welcome to Lesson 7, where we stop pretending errors don't happen and start handling them like seniors. Here's the truth. Beginners either wrap everything in a bare except or ignore failures entirely. Seniors make a judgment call, which exceptions to catch, where to catch them, and what to do once they're caught. That's the discipline we're building. Try, except, else, finally, errors handled, never hidden. Here's the roadmap. 4 skills, each a step up in judgment. First, the full 4-block discipline. Try, except, else, finally. Most beginners only ever touch 2 of them. Then the 6 built-in exceptions you'll actually catch week to week. Value error, type error, key error, FileNotFoundError, index error, attribute error. After that, custom exceptions, domain-specific errors that callers can catch by type. And finally, the real senior move, knowing when not to catch at all. EAFP over LBYL, because catching too much is how silent bugs are born. Start with the shape itself. Try holds the risky code, nothing else, except catches specific types, 1 clause per failure mode you actually understand. Else runs only when try succeeded, which keeps your success path out of the danger zone. Finally always runs, so cleanup happens whether you crashed or not. Compare that to the beginner move at the bottom, except exception pass, which swallows every bug you'll ever write. Narrow and intentional beats broad and silent every time. Now, the vocabulary. These 6 exceptions cover roughly 80% of what you'll actually hit in production. Value error means right type, wrong value, int of ABC. Type error means the operation doesn't apply to that type, string plus int. Key error, missing dict key. FileNotFoundError, the path lied. Index error, you walked off the end of a list. Attribute error, usually you called a method on none. Memorize the names. When they show up in a traceback, you should already know which one to catch. But the built-ins only get you so far. Once your code has a domain, payments, auth, ingestion, raising value error is lazy. It tells the caller nothing. Subclass exception, build a small hierarchy, and suddenly callers have options. Catch insufficient funds specifically and pop a top-up dialog, or catch the payment error base and just log it. Broad or narrow, their choice. That's the senior signal. You're not just failing, you're naming the failure. Naming failures only matters if you actually let them surface. And here's where most devs split into 2 camps. Paranoid devs wrap everything in try, except, swallow exceptions, and call it robust. It isn't. It's a graveyard of silent bugs. Defensive devs do the opposite. They catch only what they have a plan for and let everything else crash loud and visible. Because a crash you can see is a bug you can fix. A crash you hid is a ticket 6 months from now with no stacked trace. So let's see all 4 blocks working together in something you'd actually ship. 1. Try wrapping the risky API call. 3 specific accepts, a timeout that retries, a not found that gets translated into a clean domain exception, and a decode error that chains context for debugging. Else holds the success path, so logging only fires when the call actually worked, and finally guarantees the metric increments, success or failure. That's the senior shape. Specific catches, intentional re-raises, success isolated, cleanup guaranteed. Now let's zoom out to the 6 reflexes that separate senior Python from junior Python. Never bear except, always name the type. Raise from E to preserve the original traceback, because future you debugging at 2 a.m. will thank present you. Define custom exceptions so callers catch by type, not by parsing strings. Try first and catch on failure instead of checking 5 conditions up front. Use else to isolate the success path, and finally, or better, a context manager to guarantee cleanup. 6 small habits, massive compounding effect. Pin this one. 12 patterns, 1 screen, The entire error handling kit you'll actually reach for day to day. Narrow catches, multiple types, binding with as, the else and finally split, chaining with from cause, suppressing with from none, raising new errors, defining your own, EAFP over LBYL, never bear, and with over finally. Memorize the grid. The judgment calls become reflex. Now the flip side. 5 patterns that get you flagged in code review instantly. Bear except pass swallows everything, including your bugs and Ctrl+C. Wrapping a whole function means you don't know which line fails. Catching without logging makes errors vanish. Re-raising without from kills the traceback future you desperately needs. And using try except as if logic is just slow, unclear control flow. Seniors don't do these. Now you won't either. Time to put it to work. 3 exercises that move this from theory into muscle memory. First, find a try, except exception in your own code and refactor it. Figure out what can actually fail, catch those by name, turn the wide net into a focused one. Second, build a small payment error hierarchy with insufficient funds and card declined as subclasses. This is the pattern behind every serious payment client, API wrapper, or parser you'll ever read. Third, write read config using all 4 blocks. Try, except else finally, working together on a real file. Do these, and your error handling stops looking junior. So that's lesson 7. 4-block discipline, the 6 built-ins worth knowing by name, custom hierarchies when the domain demands it, and the senior mindset, defensive, not paranoid. Next up, files and JSON, pathlib, context managers, json.load, and dumps. And here's the thing. Every file you open, every JSON you parse, can fail in ways you now know how to handle. The error handling you just learned, that's where it earns its keep. See you in Lesson 8.